Hey, everybody. Thank you for just watching Staffing Monthly and all the engagement that you provide. It is truly, it's truly amazing. And I am grateful for the people we have in our audience that really reach out, provide feedback, and just engage with what we're sharing and help us on this mission to bring industry insights and actionable content to you on a monthly basis to help you get better in your professional career. And I just want to dig through a presentation that I'm going to be delivering next month at the Staffing Industry Analysts Executive Forum. And I want to give you a sneak peek of this presentation that I'll be delivering live there. And on Thursday, March 9th at Executive Forum, I'm going to be delivering the talk about how to build a successful sales plan. And obviously, those of you that follow me here, you know that I'm involved in a lot of different areas of staffing, with Staffing Mastery, providing coaching and consultancy to the industry, Staffing Monthly publication, providing actionable insights to the industry. I'm a partner with Employment Solutions of New York. I also have worked with a technical expert to develop a recruiting workflow automation tool called Candidate. And I also lead the National Independent Staffing Association. So I am a student of this industry. I serve this industry in a number of ways. And if there's any of these ways that make sense to connect with you, I would love to do that. So please make it a point to connect with me. And as we get into the agenda that we're going to be walking through, first, it's important to know that one does not just build a sales plan, okay? First, I look at a plan being the bridge to get you from where you are to where you want to be. And ultimately, if you don't know where you want to be or where you want to go, then any road will get you there. And that's a little bit dangerous and can take maybe a lot longer than you want it to. So before we get into the content of building a sales plan, it's going to be important for me to break down how to know what your sales goals should actually be, right? So we're going to spend a little bit in the beginning talking about how to actually set the right goals that you can build a plan to achieve, right? Because they have to be aligned. You don't want to build a bridge to nowhere, right? Then we're going to spend most of our time talking about how to build the sales plan, okay? And we're going to use data to create a realistic plan designed for success, okay? And then we're going to close out just how do we ensure success along the way, right? It's very easy to say, hey, this is the plan and what we're going to do. But managing the plan and the process along the way is really what helps you achieve success. So that's what we're going to focus on today. And when I approach setting goals, when I approach setting a plan and trying to understand where do I want to go or what do I want to achieve, I always just ask myself two questions. First, how much? And second, where does it come from, right? This could be a question around recruiting growth. How many headcount do we need to get to where we want to go? And where's the headcount going to come from? When it comes to revenue targets, how much revenue do we need to get to where we want to go? Where is it going to come from, right? And a lot of times when you ask that question, one of those where does it come from answers is new sales, right? And then you have to ask yourself, how much revenue do we need from new sales? And where does this revenue come from, right? And that's the first part. These two questions are the foundation of building the plan, right? So as we get into this here, we've all heard the adage that past performance is not indicative of future results, right? And that is true. However, it is a very good reference point. It is a good way to look at the past and see what your company has done, how it's performing, and is it capable of achieving certain goals that you set for yourself? So as we're looking at this, what I've realized is that most companies don't use data to determine their goals or build their plan. Most companies will say, okay, we want to grow by 10%, which can be a bit arbitrary, and honestly, the bigger you get, the bigger that 10% has to get and technically becomes harder, right? Or sometimes they just say, we want as much business as possible. Like we don't want to, constrain ourselves to some arbitrary goal, right? And you say, go get it. And, sometimes that little bit of direction or lack of direction can be damning to your organization. I personally believe that it's best if you actually use data to help you frame your goals. Okay. So I want to walk you through what I call an 8-step process to setting a plan, right? I use a similar 8-step process for setting a strategic plan that some of you might have observed when I spoke at the SIA, Advisory Growth Board a few months ago. It's a similar process to setting a successful sales plan. But step 1A, you need to identify your operational performance metrics, okay? Things like, what is your average pay rate, your average bill rate, your average markup, average gross margin per hour, right? What are your average hours per temp or contractor, right? What are your average temps, contractors per client, okay? What is your client retention rate and your GM retention rate, okay? Now, the reason that I look at these things is these are going to give you an indication of how your company performs. And generally speaking, your company is going to perform the way it does, and it's going to continue to perform the way it does because of how you approach staffing, how you approach pricing, which markets you serve, the geographies you're in. All of those external forces begin to shape, how you respond to those things. And that in turn, determines kind of who you are and how you perform as a company, right? So you need to get all of this information. And this is generally pretty easy to get out of most softwares out there, but you can pull this information out. If you're wondering about client retention rate and GM retention rates, there's a very specific exercise that I work with people on to do this. That actually is the foundation for the client growth plan that is part of a larger sales strategy. But when you're looking at step 1A, when you're looking at this information, if you use a tracker, something like I use or I built for my own, professional career, if you're looking at something like this, it's really these 6 data points that are going to give you most of the intel that you need as far as operational performance metrics, the billing, the GM, the payroll, the hours, the temps, the clients. Like, you can just be putting this in on a weekly basis and capturing this information. This data will give you most of what you need to set a sound financial plan or a sound plan to achieve a certain level of sales success, right? Now, when you're putting all of that data in week to week in a type of a tracker, whatever you use, right? This is just what I used. It can basically compound the data or basically extrapolate the patterns of the data into your averages. It's not super sophisticated, but it will tell you, what is your gross margin retention from period to period? What is your average pay per hour, your average bill? All of these things will be the data points that you need to create a sound sales plan. Now, there is another side to the data that you do need to get other than the operational performance. You do also need to understand your sales performance metrics. So step 1B, and step 1 is just getting data, right? Understanding your business and how it operates. Step 1B is understanding your salespeople and how they operate. And you should understand the yield at each part of the process, right? Every time we have salespeople go out and do stuff like make calls and have emails and do visits and go to networking events or whatever they might do, these are activities. All these activities are prospecting activities to try to generate more business, right? More sales, more revenue. And we should have an understanding of how many activities does it actually take to get a meeting, right? And I mean, when I say meeting, I mean an actual business conversation with a company that has the prospect of becoming a billing client, right? What is that conversion rate? Is it 2%, 10%, 5%? What is that conversion rate for your salespeople, right? And now you're looking at what is your conversion rate from meetings to proposals? Because typically when you have a business meeting with someone, you're learning their needs and you go through that process, right? It might result in a proposal. You might decide, hey, this is a good fit for the business. The prospect might feel like you can solve their problem. Let's put a proposal out there based on your pricing structure, right? What is your conversion rate from meetings to proposals? How many of your meetings result in you submitting a proposal? Now, just because you submit a proposal doesn't mean everyone's going to sign it, right? So now there's another conversion yield. How many clients do you get out of proposals? You need to understand that. And then another one that most companies miss is the conversion rate between clients to billing clients. We've all experienced companies that do not actually put an order in, or they put an order in but it doesn't get filled, or whatever it might be. For some reason, between signing the contract, they don't actually turn into paying clients, right? So we have to understand, like, what does that yield rate look like? And once you have this data set between 1A and 1B here, you'll have everything that you need to create the plan that I'm about to walk through, okay? So if you're looking at conversion data, just to show again, this is, part of the tracker that I built for myself. I'm sure the softwares out there that you're using can do this. But you just track this weekly. How many calls, emails, whatever activities are doing, how many meetings do they get in a week? How many proposals, how many clients are they signing, right? And you track this on a weekly basis, roll it up into quarterly so you can see trends, you can see, what activities are happening, what are their conversion percentages, and it takes you all the way through the process to see how many activities does it take to get one billing client. And as this example, you can see it's 233, right? This is good data to have. It's also good to see it by quarter because you can see if their conversion rate somewhere goes up or goes down. It might be an opportunity for training, right? So amazing, amazing tool to have and to use. But as we're looking at this here, now we can talk about step 2, right? Typically, when you're building an annual sales plan, like we're referencing here today, you're generally going to be building this in the 4th quarter, right? You're not really going to wait until January or February right now to do this. If you don't have a solid sales plan in place and you want to use this, you can do it now, right? You can get an idea of what to do and you can apply what I'm going to share with you to have a sales plan for the rest of the year. But best practice is to be doing this in Q4 so you can actually have a strong sales plan for the entire following year, right? So fast forward to October, November, whenever you're going to be sitting down with your leadership team and determining your sales plan for next year, you can do this. You can forecast your year-end financial performance. Where do we think we're going to end up? Because where we end up this year is the starting point for next year, right? That's the beginning point of our plan. As I mentioned, the plan is just a bridge to get you from where you're at to where you want to be, right? Well, we have to forecast where we're going to finish up the end of the year, and that's where we're at. And then the plan will take us to where we want to be at the end of the following year. So ultimately, all you're going to do is you're just going to take your year-to-date financial performance, and you're just going to determine an expected weekly value for each remaining week, right? If you're 39 weeks through the year, you just have to figure, hey, based on what's going on in the business right now, I expect the last 13 weeks to be X value of revenue or gross margin or whatever. And then you just add it to where you're currently at. And that's going to give you a forecast of your financial performance, where you're going to end the year. And it might actually look like this. And this is just a sidebar on my tracker that I use a couple different forecasting methods to say, hey, based on where we're at in the year, we anticipate finishing the year somewhere around 92,185,374, right? Now, for sake of argument, this is all fake data. This data is not specific to any company out there. Now, that just tells you, hey, this is where we think we're going to end up, right? Because that will become the starting point for next year. Now that we have that, the next piece that we need to start building a good plan is we need to determine an annualized run rate. Now, some people might think this step is not essential. I'll tell you why I think it's really important. One, to do this, all you do is you just take all the revenue for the past 13 weeks and create an average weekly revenue. And then you multiply it by 52. And that's going to give you kind of what the last 13-week period would look like if it was expanded over a year, your run rate, right? The reason I find this is important is this is a great indicator if you're growing or declining, right? Because if your annualized run rate is higher than your estimated year end, that means you're growing. It means you have momentum going into your starting point. When you have momentum and you're growing, it's a lot easier to accomplish sales goals, right? On the other side, this is an indicator that will tell you if you're declining. You would be surprised how many companies are actually declining, and then they set these aspirational sales goals thinking they're easier to achieve than they really are because they skipped this step, right? And they didn't realize they were going into the year decelerating, which means they were going to have resistance opposed to momentum going into next year, which makes it harder to achieve sales goals, right? So this is a really important step. Also on the sidebar of the tracker, you're going to see down below, we just have the annualized, and it's just taking the last 13 weeks of whatever period. And you can see in our example here, we're at 94. We're a couple $1 million ahead of our estimated year end, which means we have acceleration, we have momentum going into next year, which is a good position to be in. If it's not, if we were decelerating, you're going to plan your sales plan and your approach a little bit differently, right? So as we're getting into this, step 4 is just determining what is needed to achieve the growth goal, right? Every headcount has a weekly financial value, right? How many headcount do you need to grow to achieve your goals, right? Now we just need to take what we're learning and apply it to our goals and then put it into the language of the industry, headcount and clients, right? So it would look something like this. And again, this is just another part of the tracker. I do this in Excel because it's easier for me. But I'm sure the tools that you're using probably have this capability, and you can do something similar. But it's just where you would put, your year-end estimate that we talked about, the annual run rate, a goal, and how much, as I talked about, when you have a goal, how much do we want to do? That's our goal. Where does it come from? We might say we want to do 100 million. That's the how much. Where does it come from? 5 million from perm, based on our GM and client retention exercise. You might determine that 84.7 million is going to come from existing clients. Based on the 4 square exercise, you might determine that you can pull nearly 2.6 million in revenue from rate increases as part of your client growth plan that you'll run. But you'll also determine that the remainder, nearly 7.7 million, needs to come from new sales, right? So this is just going to break down, and that tells you that's how much needs to come from new sales. And you can see all of the other data. It's like, okay, well, in order to achieve that, we would need to average 220, 2020 headcount, ending the year somewhere around 2,168. Looks like we're going to need to acquire 34 billing clients, right? So it gives you some perspective of the work that needs to be done, okay? And that is going to lead us right up until step 5, which is where we're going to spend most of our time talking about building the sales plan, right? When it comes to building a plan, you really just need to know there's kind of 2 things that you have to look after. What is it that needs to be done and how are we going to do it, right? What needs to be done? How are we going to do it? And when we're building a sales plan, we're just going to use the performance metrics that we've identified to determine what the sales team needs to do to achieve the financial goals, okay? We're going to spend a lot of time here. I'm going to break down this process. If you have questions, you can certainly ask them at the end. With this, the first thing to keep in mind is that when you are building a sales plan or any plan, you need to start with the end in mind. What are we trying to achieve, right? If we're thinking about a sales plan being the bridge to get us where we're at to where we want to go, we have to know where we want to go, right? And in this case here, let's say that we want to achieve $7,682,530 in new sales revenue, right? In order to do that, that essentially equates to $147,741 per week of revenue, which when you're starting out with new sales and you always start from zero, right? That might seem like a lot, but we're going to break this down a little bit further to show you how it actually works. So now $147,000 in weekly revenue is roughly 155 billing headcount, right? So now we're converting this into the language of the industry. Now 155 billing headcount becomes the average weekly headcount target, right? This is a number. If you say, hey, in order for us to hit our goals, we're trying to get to 155 billing headcount out of this new sales campaign, right? Not part of what we've already done, not from existing accounts per se, but out of the new sales bucket, right? So if 155 is the average weekly target, that actually becomes your mid-year goal. So we're trying to get from essentially 0 headcount under the new sales campaign to 155 by the end of June, right? So now we're like, okay, we're starting to frame targets. We're starting to frame out the bridge. Does this make sense? Awesome. So now as we're looking at this, it's going to look something like this. If we're starting from 0, we need to get to 155 by the midpoint of the year, which means that we essentially need to be somewhere around 310 by the end of the year, right? So now we can set these quarterly benchmarks, so now you're looking at this and you're starting to frame out the plan, the what needs to happen, right? With a plan, it's what needs to happen and how does it need to happen, right? So here's our quarterlies. End of week 13, we want to strive to be at 78. End of week 26, strive to be at 155, so on and so forth. So that tells us where our billing headcount should be. It gives us a metric to compare progress against. Now, taking this a little bit further, now we understand based on the operational performance metrics that 155 billing headcount equates to roughly 16 billing clients, right? We're speaking the language of the industry, headcount and clients, right? That's how recruiters and salespeople talk. So now 16 billing clients becomes the mid-year goal. So now you're actually aligning it like this, where now you've got your quarterly, laid out. You've got your headcount targets per quarter where you're trying to finish at. Now you've got your billing clients laid out, and you can start to see the framing of the bridge, the what needs to happen part of the plan, right? Now, if we're getting more into the, where are we going? It tells you that 33 billing clients becomes the year-end goal. So now as you're talking to your team, they should know that we need to get to 16 by the midpoint and 33 by the end of the year. Like those are the goals. That's what we're driving towards, right? Clear instruction, clear results. If you give that level of visibility, people know what they're working towards. That's an easier time to work towards it. So now we need to realize that often misstep is that not every acquired client turns into a billing client. And if we just assume that every client that we acquire is going to turn into a billing client, we're setting ourselves up to fall short and not be successful. So we need to make sure that we're actually, accounting for that conversion yield of clients to billing clients. And based on using our sales activity tracker stuff that I highlighted a moment ago, you can see that we're trying to acquire 33 billing clients by the end of the year, but ultimately our performance indicates that we're going to need to acquire 46 actual signed contracts or clients to get to 33 billing clients, right? Now, the good news is planning for the 46 means we have a better chance of hitting the 33. If you plan for 33 and you fall short, you have no other choice but to miss your goal, right? But if you plan for 46 and you fall short, you've got plenty of opportunity to hit or exceed your goal still, right? It's what they say. If you shoot for the stars, you'll catch the moon on the way down, right? Same concept. Now that we're looking at that yield, now we actually have to use the sales performance data to see, okay, out of how many acquired clients, how many proposals is that going to take? How many meetings is that going to take? How many activities do we need to do to get those meetings, right? And now we're starting to lay out the quarterly benchmarks. Super simple, right? Now this is again, we're framing out the what needs to happen part of the plan, okay? You're starting to see, okay, this is what needs to happen. We need to have 1,900 activities in Q1. And our target of those 1,900 activities is to get 38 meetings. And we anticipate being able to submit 22 proposals out of those meetings. And of those 22 proposals, we anticipate getting 12, acquired clients that should result in the 8 billing clients that is our target for Q1, right? So now you're starting to use this data, the backwards planning piece, to actually work into the framing of what we need to do to achieve the goal. So the next piece is now you've framed that out and you know how much work needs to be done. Then you have to start planning the activities, right? What is the work that needs to be done specifically? What are the activities? Where are the top of funnel TOF leads going to come from, right? How will you track progress along the way? You need to start planning these activities out and building these into your day, because this is the actual how the work is done, right? This is the little connector between what needs to be done and how it's going to be done. And what you plan is going to make a difference. A couple of the campaigns that I use and have had success with and teach, one is the 30-day plan. This is really more of a blitz mentality. It is a high velocity type plan where you are focused on a lot of touches. It's a very targeted multi-touch campaign. And when I say targeted, you're literally going to find at least 30 prospects where you have all of their contact information, and you're going to map out the actual cadence of activities that you're going to do. But all of the prospects that are on this list should meet the criteria of success to deliver you to your goal of 7.6 million or the 155 headcount. So if you're doing this, you can't be focusing on companies where there's going to be a lot of onesie twosies, right? You have to focus on companies that can actually provide the staffing headcount that you need to hit your targets, right? So you'll pick very specific prospects that you're going to go after. And then you are going to plan out different prospecting activities for each day. I'm going to show an example of this in a second, but ultimately this is a high touch, high velocity plan where you're kind of blitz mentality. You're taking 30 prospects through a short window of time with a lot of touches, typically 23 in a month. And it might look something like this. And this is, again, this is out of the same tracker concept where we plan it. So every day, day 1 is a call, 2 email, 3 networking, 4 referral, day 5 is another call. And you might have different activities for the day. And this is going to be dependent on who you are as a company, the types of companies you're prospecting, the types of salespeople you have. Some people, they work on a national footprint. So doing things like a physical walk-in, not realistic, right? You have people that are really strong on the phone and maybe should do more calls. You have other people that are amazing at writing emails and maybe they should amp up the emails in their plans. So you can custom tailor this part of it to you, your organization, your prospect demographics, as well as your salespeople, but you'll have a plan that you can work people through. Now, as an alternative, you can also follow something that I teach as a 12-week plan, and I was really inspired by this, by the 12-week year. I love the concept of kind of hyper-focused periods of intensity, right? Over this kind of long period of time, which long as 12 weeks. I think it's long enough to see results, but short enough to not lose sight of the goal. So here, you might actually start with a number of new prospects each week and be dropping them into your campaign, right? Where every week is going to have a different activity. And you're just going to move these prospects through that activity from week to week to week to week until they, until one of the 3 fates occurs. Ideally with either of these prospecting plans, you want them to either say, no, I'm not interested. We don't use agencies, or no, please stop calling. And you remove them from the plan. Or 2, ideally, they say, yes, this is great. Let's set up a meeting, right? And you move them to your sales cycle, which is still removing them from this plan. Or the 3rd fate is they don't ever respond and you just get to the end. And then you have to put them in the recycle bucket for later, right? But you would just drip these in each week and you start moving people through the process where the max number of prospects or touches to a prospect in a quarter might be 15. So less velocity than the 30-day plan, but more consistency over a longer period of time. So you really have to choose what is the best plan for you and your organization. This one might look something like this. You might just order, hey, week 1, we're going to do, LinkedIn outreach. We're going to start our cycle off by just doing some LinkedIn outreach, right? Week 2, you might have a little bit of a flurry now that you got their attention. You want to do an email, call, and then a LinkedIn follow-up, right? And then move them through. And these are just examples. Like you're going to go through and you're going to custom tailor these. You might drip in, postcards or a mailing or something else. You might drip into this. But you can see how the weeks at the top, week 1 is super slow. You got 10 prospects that you're going to be moving through the funnel, right? But week 2, it adds up. Week 3 adds up. And this builds over time until you get into, the 12th and 13th weeks when you're sort of in the cycle, right? And you're just keeping this through. But each week you're just dropping new people into the actual campaign. This is measurable. This is a plan that somebody can follow, right? A salesperson can say, okay, I know that I've got to introduce 10 new prospects and do LinkedIn outreach to 10 new prospects, right? And 10 might seem like a really low number, but you have to think with the end in mind. Eventually that 10 is going to be a whole lot of touch points when you get into weeks 12 and 13. Now, obviously, I know that it's not going to be all 10s, right? It never will be. You're going to have people that say, stop calling me. You're going to have people that say, hey, let's talk. And those ones will get removed out of the plan. And you'll just keep working people through until they either respond or they reach the 12th week. And at that point, you'll recycle them and reinsert them into the campaign later on in the year, right? But this is the beginning of the how to do what we do. Now, as we're looking at this, the next part that we need to plan for is where are the prospects going to come from? Where are the top of funnel leads that are fueling these plans going to come from? Like, what do we expect? Do we expect salespeople to go out and generate their own leads? Do we have an amazing marketing team that is actually generating a lot of leads for us that are just flowing in? Do we have a tool like Seamless or Zoom Info or something like that that is actually we're pulling from to get leads that they just need to source on LinkedIn? you need to have an answer for this so we can keep filling the funnel, right? Like that's the first part of this, is getting prospects into one of these two campaigns, right? So we know that like, hey, by the end of the quarter, we need to have done 1,900 activities. Well, if we're on a 30-day plan, right? For a 30-day plan, we need at least 30 prospects in each one to be able to do this, you know? And then if we're doing a 12-week plan, you're gonna need at least 130, 10 a week to be dropping into the funnel, right? And you'll plan this out based on the activities you need to accomplish, to hit your goals. You'll be able to plan how many leads do you need to push through the campaigns. And those are minimums that we're talking about. So now that we've framed out the what needs to happen, that's what we've done. We've basically built the plan by framing out what needs to happen. The next piece is we need to know how it needs to happen, right? It's one thing to say, hey, I need you to call 150 people, but it's the how, the execution piece that's going to determine if you have a level of success or not, right? So you need to plan for that. You need to train how to do the work, right? You need to train how are they getting new prospects, like I mentioned. Are they responsible for scouring LinkedIn? Are they doing the networking stuff? Do they have access to the tools? Like, are they using the resume search tip that I use? Like, how are they doing it? You need to train them on how to do that part, how to fill the funnel. And then you need to train them on how to make a great cold call. Are they doing the 5-part process, right? Teach them how to send great emails. Are they nailing the subject line? Do they have the right character count and the right word count and the right, framework of it? Is their email hitting the 5 parts of an effective email, right? Are they doing it that way, right? You need to train them how to do it, and it needs to be part of your training process. How do they effectively network? Most people show up to networking events and they're super friendly in their plate and they think that they're effective, but the reality is they're not really moving the process forward because they don't have a networking game plan, right? We need to teach them how to do that. That's part of building a sales plan that's successful. How do they get great referrals? Most people don't even know what a referral looks like, what a good referral is, or how to ask for it. And you need to teach your people this and consistently teach your people this. How do you optimize LinkedIn? How do you set your profile up the right way? How do you work LinkedIn? What are the outreach campaigns that you're running on LinkedIn to be optimized, to be driving towards a successful outcome? You have to teach these things, right? And all of these things would be an entire workshop in and of themselves. That's why I can only go this deep here. But they also need to know how to navigate sales meetings. Do they know the questioning strategies? Do they know what they're driving for? Do they know how to, sell based on value? Do they know how to negotiate, right? You have to teach them how to propose and negotiate with clients, right? So you're not, competing on price. You need to teach them how to close clients. Sometimes you'll have a pipeline clog up with just clients that have not signed, unsigned proposals. And you need to figure out, how do you manage that pipeline? Like, teach them how to do this to keep the process flowing. And you got to teach them how to track their progress, right? Like, that's a big part of, making sure you're going to get to where you want to go, is to make sure that you're on the right track, right? So that is part of building the successful sales plan, is understanding how to frame out what needs to happen and then make sure you can train how it needs to happen, right? And if you do those two things really, really well, you will have a sound plan for your organization. Now, once you build the plan, step 6 of our step 8 process here is communicate the sales plan. A lot of times people fall down on the communication step and you don't actually share the information that's relevant, or you don't share it in a way that is clear. And you have to understand that clear instructions gets clear results. If you want clear results, give clear instructions, right? So if you're going to communicate this, you need to share, what are the organization's goals, right? What revenue needs to come from new sales? We talked about that, the organization's going to grow. That revenue is going to come from somewhere, existing clients, perm business, rate increases, whatever it might be. Some of it has to come from new sales. So you want to show how the goals of the sales plan support the new sales goals of revenue and how it supports the organization. And then you want to convert it into, or translate it into, the language of the industry. How many headcount and new billing clients do we need to hit that revenue target? And then you need to clearly communicate the work that is going to be done. What is the work and who's going to do it? And then how will the work be done, right? So this is the process we're going to follow. We're going to follow this prospecting plan, and then we're going to say, how are we going to measure and report progress? You need to build a culture of accountability, and this is how you do it. And it might look something like one of the templates that we use. I'm not going to read this, but just to summarize, it just says, hey, this is our goal. That has to come from new sales. In order to get here, a piece of it needs to come from new headcount. This is how we're going to track it, what our goals are. We're going to measure and report it each week. In addition to headcount, we understand that we got to grow billing clients. To hit our goal, we currently have 62. We need to add 34 new billing clients. So our year-end goal is 96. And we're going to follow a 12-week prospecting plan to get there. And we're going to measure and report this on a weekly basis as a company and also as an individual salesperson. So everybody can see how they're contributing to the goal, right? This is just part of the overall strategic, communication template that I use, but this is just modified for this part of the sales plan communication. And once you've communicated effectively, communication doesn't stop with announcing it on the front end. You have to keep communicating it at your weekly touch points, which we're going to talk about. But you should have these weekly touch points. You should have your, monthlies, your quarterlies, which I'll mention. But you always have to be communicating, the goal, progress, and what we're doing and how we're getting there, right? But step 7 is so important. You need to align it to the person, right? You need to, if you have a sales team, each person should know how many new billing clients and increased weekly billing headcount they're responsible for producing to help achieve the organizational goal, right? If you need to add 100 new clients and you have a sales team of 10, maybe each person's goal is 10, right? Maybe that's all even. Maybe some people have, different territories, and maybe one person is 15 and someone else is 5, right? But everyone should understand what role they play in aligning to the overall goal. And then ideally, you can work with them to align this progress to the financial performance, to that of their professional and personal goals, right? That's the goal. That creates alignment and buy-in. If you can show them how them accomplishing their goals and help supporting the organizational goals can be meaningful to them personally and professionally, you will get buy-in and people will follow this plan. Step 8, this is just working the plan. This is it. This is the 8th step of my planning process. It's working the plan. Get out of planning mode. Once you lay the plan, start working the plan, and do not blow the plan up. Do not, rebuild the plan every time. Do not get into this planning cycle where you're constantly just planning, right? You do want to track your progress weekly. Have quick weekly huddles where you can review the work, results and progress towards the goal. I found that using simple reporting templates like, hey, my goal was to accomplish this week. This is what's happened, how many meetings, proposals, and clients I've achieved. Here's where I'm at towards my goal of, I've got a goal of 10 new clients by the end of the year and a head count of 120, whatever it might be. And this is where I'm at on that goal. It's a super simple 30-second reporting where people can just check in and everyone can get a sense of where they're at. And then monthly, you're gonna have a little bit more of an elaborate meeting, a little more formal, not much, but a deeper dive. And you're going to evaluate the performance against the target. Hey, for this month, we wanted to do this many activities, have this many meetings, have this many proposals, clients, grow our billing headcount and our billing clients by this amount. What did we actually do, right? You're gonna be breaking it down like that as an organization, and then possibly as a team, depending on how you operate your company. But then at least quarterly, you should have team meetings that take a deeper dive into that, where you're actually talking about progress and discussing necessary changes. These are the times of the year that you might entertain doing changes unless something catastrophic happens in the month, right? But this is when you might say, okay, let's compare what we're doing against the strategy of the company. And does anything need to change? Let's look at our performance against anticipated goals or progress and see, does anything need to change? Does our pricing structure need to change? Does our outreach need to change? Do the source of our leads need to change? You'll start to look at your performance throughout the process. And after having a quarter's worth of data, you'll have enough data to be able to determine, are there necessary changes we need to make sure that we still hit the annual organizational goals, right? And then also quarterly, individual performance management meetings. This is where you're reviewing your individual results and you're addressing the opportunities for improvement. This is where you're talking about your individual producer's performance and saying, hey, this is what our goals were. This is what we achieved. Some of the things that I've identified that work on are this, and this, right? And then we can work on those things to help improve our people and ideally become better at this process. So Just a quick recap as I send you off today is this is the 8-step plan. First, you got to identify the performance metrics. Obviously, for the presentation, I broke it down into A and B because it's operational performance, like how does the company perform, within the industry. And then the other one, sales performance metrics. How are your salespeople perform through the sales process, right? 2, forecasting your year-end performance. If you're doing this as part of an annual plan, this is going to be critical. If you're just saying, hey, I want to outline a sales plan for the next quarter, you can use some of these elements without that, but this is really designed to be more of a strategic, complementary to the strategic plan. Step 3, determine your annualized run rate. Just figure out, do I have momentum? Am I accelerating or decelerating, right? Depending on what's happening there should shape your plan, right? And then based on those things, you can determine your new sales goal. And what you're saying is like, hey, we know this much revenue needs to come from new sales. This is our target. And once you know that is the where you want to go. Now you can build your bridge to get there, which is planning the work like we laid out extensively here. And then once you've built the plan, once you've actually figured out what needs to happen and how it needs to happen, then you can communicate it to the team, right? You can share them exactly what needs to happen, where we're going, how it aligns with the organization goals, how we're going to get there, what we're going to do. And then once you've communicated the plan thoroughly and you've explained how we're going to keep, measure and track progress and create a culture of accountability, then we're going to align it to the individual performer. We're going to show everybody that their contributions matter and why they matter. And then ideally, you can help align those contributions and that performance to the professional and personal goals that they have. So they are committed and bought into the growth of the company, right? And then finally, you're just going to work the plan and make necessary adjustments as you work through the process, on a quarterly basis. With that, you have successfully the framework for building a successful sales plan. Thank you. I hope you found that useful and this was good information and you feel like this is going to give you the framework that you need following this 8-part process to build a successful sales plan for you. If you have any additional questions about this and you want to learn more about it, you can certainly ask me directly. If you want to see it live in person, come out to the Executive Forum next month and check this out. Make sure you can pull me aside after the event and ask me any questions you have about this. Thank you and enjoy.